The Texas sun dipped low on the horizon, staining the sky above Dawson Ranch with streaks of blood orange and gold. Long shadows from the old oaks and the line of grazing horses stretched across the dusty yard, where a crowd of ranch hands, neighbors, and onlookers had gathered. In the heart of it all stood Evelyn Harper, the woman they called the Wild Horse Whisperer, silver hair caught in the breeze, blue eyes keen and unflinching as she faced the heat of another public challenge. The air was thick with expectation. Some came to see a legend, others to see a legend fall. Evelyn's boots were worn smooth from decades of walking Texas earth. Her face, framed by that proud silver mane, was lined by time and sun, but her gaze held a quiet strength. She carried herself with the kind of composure that only comes from surviving loss, heartbreak, and the unforgiving wildness of both man and horse. The rumor mill said she could talk a stallion down from madness with nothing but a look. Today, the rumor mill was about to be put to the test. Standing across from her, perched on the corral fence with the easy arrogance of youth, was Travis Dawson, the new prince of the Dawson Ranch. Barely 30, with dark hair and a sharper tongue, Travis had inherited the land, but not its legacy. His expensive boots and perfectly pressed shirt stood out in a crowd of sweat-stained working men. He wore his last name like a crown, and his father's old Stetson hat, as if he'd earned it himself. Evelyn could feel his eyes on her, measuring, mocking, as she approached the paddock. The onlookers hushed, sensing that something was about to break. "Evening, Ms. Harper," Travis called, voice loud enough for everyone to hear, that cocky drawl oiled with sarcasm. "You ready to prove you're still the queen of lost causes, or should we call it a night and send you back to your knitting?" A ripple of uneasy laughter rolled through the crowd. Evelyn didn't flinch. She glanced up, caught Travis's eye, and let the silence stretch just long enough for his smirk to falter. "I reckon I'm ready for whatever challenge you've cooked up, Travis," she replied, her tone calm as a summer dusk. "I'm too old to be scared by the sound of my own name." Travis leaned back, gesturing toward the far end of the corral. The crowd parted, and out of the pen thundered Midnight Saint, the infamous black stallion. His coat gleamed, black as oil beneath the last rays of sunlight, muscles rippling as he reared and struck the dirt with a snort that echoed off the barn walls. He was all fury and fire, eyes wild, untamed. No one had managed to get close enough to touch him, let alone break him. "There he is, folks, the untamable pride of Dawson Ranch," Travis announced, waving his arm as if introducing a circus act. "Our Midnight Saint. Nobody's been able to get a halter on him, not my daddy, not the trainers from Dallas, not even the so-called experts." His gaze locked on Evelyn, hard. "But you, Harper, they say you can work miracles. So here's the deal." He paused, letting suspense build. "You tame that horse tonight, right here in front of all these good people, and I'll eat my hat," he said, voice rising. "But if you fail, you walk away from Dawson Ranch for good. You're done. No more stories. No more glory days, no more interfering with progress. The old way ends tonight." A gasp ran through the crowd. Even the wind seemed to die down. Evelyn felt every eye in the yard on her, some hopeful, some doubting, a few waiting for her to fail. She looked at Midnight Saint, studied the arch of his neck, the panic in his eyes, the years of mistreatment and misunderstanding that had made him what he was. She saw herself in him, the stubbornness, the scars, the fight to stay wild in a world determined to break you. Without hesitation, Evelyn nodded. "Bring him out, Travis," she said. "Let's see what a little respect and patience can do." As the ranch hands moved to herd Midnight Saint into the central ring, Travis jumped down from the fence, swaggering close enough that only she could hear. "You're finished, Harper. There's no room for ghosts on this ranch." Evelyn gave a thin smile, eyes never leaving the stallion. "Maybe so. But sometimes it's the ghosts who remind us what we've lost." The last of the daylight bled away as the circle closed in. Midnight Saint stamped and pawed at the ground, nostrils flaring. Evelyn walked to the gate, pulling a battered harmonica from her pocket, her one talisman from a past that refused to die. The crowd held its breath as she stepped inside, unarmed, unafraid, just a woman and a legend in the making. The moment hung suspended between heartbeats. The fate of the ranch, the reputation of a legend, the pride of a young man desperate to prove himself, all balanced on the edge of what would happen next. The hush that fell over Dawson Ranch was so deep you could hear the wind catching in the fence wires and the uneasy shifting of boots in the dust. The makeshift arena glowed under the fading sun, and every soul present, ranch hand or visitor, friend or foe, felt something significant was about to unfold. Evelyn Harper took a long, slow breath and stepped into the ring, closing the gate behind her with a quiet finality. In her right hand, she held the battered harmonica, the old metal dulled by time but still gleaming faintly in the low light. With her left, she kept her posture open, showing Midnight Saint she was no threat, no enemy. The stallion watched her, snorting, black mane tossing as he stomped and circled, every muscle quivering with suspicion. The crowd, pressed up against the corral rails, exchanged whispers. Some placed silent bets. Some shook their heads. Nobody had ever lasted long with Midnight Saint in a closed pen. Travis Dawson crossed his arms and waited, his eyes hard and cold, determined to see this old legend finally broken. Evelyn didn't speak. She didn't shout, didn't brandish ropes or whips. Instead, she lifted the harmonica to her lips and let the first notes drift out, soft, haunting, a tune that carried over the Texas dusk like a memory. The sound was plaintive, echoing old lullabies and the wind across the open plains. It wasn't just music. It was a promise, a gentle call to trust. Midnight Saint threw his head, startled by the unfamiliar melody. For a moment, he lunged toward the rails, sending ranch hands scurrying. Evelyn kept playing, her own breathing syncing with the notes, letting the music do what years of rough hands and loud voices never could. She shifted her stance, lowering her body, making herself smaller, less threatening. Minutes ticked by, slow, tense, every eye glued to the ring. The stallion circled, ears flicking, torn between fight and curiosity. Evelyn moved with him, step for step, never turning her back, never looking away. Her blue eyes softened, radiating patience. Then, something shifted. The horse's breath slowed, his wild eyes settling, his pace dropping to a tentative walk. The harmonica's melody wove through the air, steady and low. Evelyn knelt, laying the instrument gently in the dust. Her hands empty, palms up. "Easy, boy," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You're safe. No one's gonna break you." Midnight Saint snorted, pawed the earth, but didn't bolt. The crowd grew restless. Someone coughed, another muttered that she was just wasting time. Travis looked impatient, but Sarah, the housekeeper, pressed a hand to her heart, eyes shining with something like hope. Evelyn remained perfectly still. She knew trust was a fragile thing, especially in a creature that had learned to fear everything but its own wildness. She let the silence settle again, broken only by the horse's breathing and the occasional shuffle of her boots in the dust. Slowly, she extended her hand, palm out, letting Midnight Saint decide the pace. The stallion stretched his neck, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent, faint traces of leather, grass, and the old harmonica's metal tang. He hesitated, muscles bunched, ready to bolt. Then, with a trembling snort, he stepped forward, inch by inch, testing the air, drawn by something in her presence that was softer than words. The crowd seemed to lean in, caught in the spell. A single bead of sweat trickled down Travis's brow. Evelyn waited, letting the moment unfold naturally. Finally, Midnight Saint's velvet nose brushed her fingertips. The connection was electric, something ancient, pure, and utterly breathtaking. Evelyn smiled, slow and genuine. "There you go," she murmured, stroking his cheek, her touch feather-light. "That's it. You're all right." The stallion shivered, then, impossibly, lowered his head, submitting for the first time in his life. Evelyn stepped closer, hands gentle moving to his forehead. She scratched him softly between the ears. For the first time, Midnight Saint stood calm, utterly still, in front of the entire ranch. The silence that followed was thunderous. The crowd was stunned. Not a single person made a sound, mouths open, eyes wide. Travis, who had expected a disaster, could only watch as his symbol of pride, the untamable beast, bowed to the woman he'd spent all evening trying to shame. Evelyn picked up her harmonica, dusted it off, and slipped it back into her pocket. She didn't gloat or boast. Instead, she stroked Midnight Saint's mane and whispered a quiet thank you. Then she looked up, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. Her voice, though soft, carried to every corner of the ranch. "Sometimes all it takes is a little patience, a little respect," she said, "and a willingness to listen to what isn't being said." The ranch hands, grizzled old men and callow youths alike, stood in awe. Some removed their hats, some wiped at their eyes. Even the most hardened cowboys knew they'd witnessed something rare. Travis, cheeks flushed with embarrassment and disbelief, could barely find his voice. He stared at Evelyn, at the stallion standing quietly beside her, and for the first time, his bravado crumbled. Evelyn led Midnight Saint out of the ring, walking calmly, her dignity intact. She paused at the gate, giving Travis a measured look, a look that said everything words couldn't. She had won, not just the bet, but the respect of everyone present. As the sun disappeared and the first stars pricked the night sky, the legend of the wild horse whisperer only grew stronger. And somewhere deep inside, Evelyn felt the old wounds begin to stir. Because sometimes, miracles in the arena were only the beginning of the battles you had to face. The hush of twilight wrapped Dawson Ranch in a blue haze as the excitement from the arena faded into memory. Night crept in quietly, softening the sharp lines of fences and barns, silencing the laughter and gossip that lingered after Evelyn's victory. Only the crickets dared to fill the silence now, their song weaving through the humid Texas air like a lullaby for the weary and the wild alike. Evelyn Harper walked alone down the narrow dirt path leading to her modest cabin at the edge of the property. Each step carried a subtle ache, the kind that came from years spent fighting battles that never really ended, only shifted shape. Her boots made soft thuds in the packed earth, the harmonica in her pocket feeling heavier than it had in years. The moon hung low, casting pale silver across the pasture and the figure of Midnight Saint, who lingered at the fence, watching her go with curious eyes. She paused for a moment at the gate to her yard, glancing back. The stallion was there, tall, black as night, his spirit unbroken yet now tinged with trust. He reminded her so much of another wild soul she had once tried to gentle, a man instead of a horse, and a story that had never truly left her heart. Evelyn stepped inside, lighting a lamp and letting its golden glow fill the small room. The walls were lined with old photographs, faded letters, and trinkets that only she would ever care about. She sank into her battered chair and reached for a tin box kept on the table, a box of memories best left unopened, but tonight she could not help herself. Her hands, still steady despite the day's ordeal, opened the lid. Inside were relics, a folded handkerchief, a dried wildflower, a silver locket, and beneath them all, a photograph, the only one she had dared keep, of Daniel Dawson, Travis's late uncle. His eyes were kind, his smile uncertain, as if he'd never fully believed he deserved happiness. In that picture, Evelyn looked younger, her hair dark and unburdened, her arm tucked around Daniel's waist. She traced his face with her thumb, heart squeezing as old wounds flared to life. It had been decades, but some scars refused to fade. Their love had bloomed in secret, two lonely souls finding solace in each other's company. Daniel had been the first to call her brave, the only man who'd listened instead of laughed, who saw her not as a curiosity, but as an equal. He was gone now, lost to a riding accident that still carried whispers of blame, whispers that had painted Evelyn as an outsider forevermore. Outside, the wind picked up. Evelyn leaned back, letting her mind drift through the years, through moments of stolen joy and long stretches of regret. Her biggest secret, however, lay not in her love for Daniel, but in the child she had kept hidden from the world. Clara Harper, her daughter. Born out of wedlock, a fact that would have destroyed both Evelyn's reputation and the fragile peace on Dawson Ranch. Evelyn had sent Clara away as an infant, keeping her safe from the family shame, from the gossip that could have ruined them both. She'd written letters, made secret visits, but always kept a wall between their lives. Now, as her own years dwindled, the weight of that choice grew heavier by the day. Evelyn rose and crossed to the window, the photograph still clutched in her hand. Midnight Saint stood at the fence, head raised, watching the shadows slide across the land. In him, she saw echoes of herself, a creature shaped by loss, defiant and wild, unwilling to surrender even when surrender might have meant peace. "Funny, isn't it, boy?" she murmured, "how we carry our scars with us, no matter how many years pass." The horse flicked his ears, almost as if he heard her. She smiled, a sad little twist of her lips, and set the photograph back in its box. Some nights, memories were a blessing, a tether to the past. Other nights, they were a curse, reopening wounds she'd thought long healed. Tonight, they were simply there, as real as the ache in her bones and the longing in her chest. She sat again and picked up her harmonica. The tune she played was softer this time, full of longing and gentle sorrow. The notes drifted out the open window, floating across the fields toward the black stallion, the ranch, and maybe, if she was lucky, toward the daughter she'd never been able to claim. As the melody faded, Evelyn closed her eyes. She let the quiet fill the room, let the ache have its moment. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called, and Midnight Saint answered with a low nicker. Evelyn thought about Clara, where she might be tonight, whether she was safe, whether she hated her mother for all the secrets. Would Clara ever return? Would she ever forgive her? The questions circled, never landing. The room felt heavy, the silence a living thing. But even as regret pressed in, Evelyn felt a small, persistent hope stirring inside her. Fragile, maybe foolish, but alive. As long as she could still draw breath, as long as the stars burned over Texas, she told herself, it was never too late for healing. With a sigh, she set the harmonica down and turned down the lamp. The darkness was deep, but Evelyn Harper, like the wild black stallion, was not ready to surrender, not just yet. And somewhere out in that vast Texas night, it felt like change was coming. Slow, sure, inevitable as the dawn. The Texas dawn arrived with a hush and a promise, streaks of pale gold reaching across endless fields and dissolving the night's shadows. In the soft, cool hours before the sun climbed high and turned the world to fire, the ranch stirred quietly. Even the air felt new, clean, and for a moment, anything seemed possible. Evelyn Harper stood at her cabin door, hat in hand, gazing across the dewy grass. The previous day's showdown already felt like something out of a dream, the sort of legend people would repeat for years. Yet for her, it was simply a beginning, not a triumphant end. She spotted Midnight Saint grazing at the far end of the paddock, his black coat gleaming wet with dew. He looked up as she approached, ears flicking forward, body tense but not hostile. Evelyn walked slow, every gesture measured, talking softly the way she did with the frightened colts she'd trained over the years. "Easy now," she murmured, pausing just out of reach. "No tricks this morning, just you and me." After a long moment, Midnight Saint stepped forward. His movement was cautious, but something had shifted in him, a faint trust, an acknowledgement. Evelyn reached out, palm open, and this time he nuzzled her hand, lips brushing her fingers for a sugar cube she'd tucked in her pocket. She laughed quietly, her heart swelling with a private joy. "Didn't think I forgot, did you?" The world around them was still. Evelyn ran her hand along the stallion's sleek neck, feeling the living heat beneath his skin. She remembered Daniel's words, "Gentleness is stronger than any rope." Today she would prove him right once again. She slipped a halter over Midnight Saint's head, careful not to spook him, and led him to the gate. The stallion followed willingly, steps light, spirit unbroken, but no longer ruled by fear. The ranch hands who watched from a distance exchanged glances, respect dawning where skepticism had reigned the night before. Evelyn mounted up with practiced grace and rode out into the open prairie. The world seemed limitless, the morning air alive with birdsong and the sweet scent of mesquite. Midnight Saint moved beneath her with power and purpose, muscles rippling, stride sure and free. For the first time, horse and rider were partners, not adversaries. They crossed a creek, splashing through clear water that mirrored the endless Texas sky. Evelyn breathed deep, letting the peace of the land fill her. Out here, she could forget for a while the burdens of secrets and regrets. She could just be. Later that morning, children from nearby ranches gathered at the corral for their weekly lesson. Evelyn had always opened her gates to kids, especially those with trouble at home or nowhere else to go. Today, she brought Midnight Saint with her, a living example of what patience could accomplish. She greeted each child by name, steadying nervous hands and calming excited whispers. "Let the horse come to you," she instructed, kneeling beside a wide-eyed girl who clutched a worn cowboy hat. "Trust him. He'll trust you back." The children watched in awe as Midnight Saint nuzzled the girl's palm, then let another boy stroke his glossy flank. For a moment, their laughter rang out pure and bright. The worries of the grown-up world forgotten. Evelyn guided them through basic riding, how to sit tall, how to ask without demanding, how to listen with more than just their ears. "It's not about control," she told them. "It's about respect. You give it, you get it." From across the yard, Travis Dawson watched, arms folded, eyes narrowed with something complex. Resentment, yes, but also curiosity, maybe even admiration. He didn't approach, didn't interrupt, but the set of his jaw said he was watching every move Evelyn made. Sarah, the housekeeper, who'd been with the Dawsons since before Travis was born, leaned on the fence, a knowing smile on her lips. She'd always believed in Evelyn, always whispered encouragement when the rest of the ranch doubted. Now, as she passed Evelyn a tin cup of coffee, her eyes sparkled with more than pride. "You've got them all thinking, Evelyn," Sarah said quietly. "Even Travis. You keep this up. He might just have to learn something new, though he'll never admit it." Evelyn chuckled, the lines around her eyes deepening. "He's a Dawson, stubborn as they come. But I was too once." Sarah's smile faded a bit, her gaze drifting to the distant hills. "Just be careful. There's trouble brewing. Old family secrets don't stay buried for long out here." Evelyn's hand paused on the coffee cup. "You mean Travis?" Sarah shook her head. "Travis, sure, but not just him. There's talk in town, the will, the land, Daniel's name coming up again. Folks can't leave the past alone." Before Evelyn could answer, a commotion rose at the ranch gates. Hoofbeats sounded. A rider, fast and determined, approaching in a cloud of dust. The children froze. The ranch hands stood straighter. Sarah's face went pale. A stranger dismounted at the fence, tall and lean, wearing city boots and a travel-stained coat. Even from a distance, Evelyn could see the flash of blue eyes, startlingly familiar. The newcomer hesitated, then looked straight at Evelyn, an unspoken message passing between them. Sarah leaned close, voice trembling. "Do you know who that is?" Evelyn swallowed hard, the cup shaking slightly in her grasp. "I think I do." The mood, gentle only moments before, now shimmered with something uneasy. The children sensed it, falling quiet as the stranger approached. Travis turned, suspicion darkening his features. As the stranger paused at the threshold of the ranch, the past and present collided, secrets stirring, old wounds ready to reopen. The morning light was brighter now, but its warmth felt fragile, easily lost. And as Evelyn watched the stranger with those familiar eyes step into the yard, she knew that the peace she'd worked so hard to build was about to be tested like never before. The morning sun had barely lifted above the horizon, but already the Dawson Ranch felt transformed, electric with tension that hummed beneath every ordinary movement. Evelyn stood near the corral, heart pounding as she watched the stranger, now close enough for everyone to see her face, stride across the yard. She was younger than most expected, maybe 25, with striking blue eyes and sandy hair tied back from her face. She wore the dust and fatigue of a long journey, but there was something else, a confidence that was both defiant and vulnerable. For a moment, the whole ranch seemed to freeze. Every conversation, every task paused. Travis stepped forward, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust, eyes hard as flint. "Who are you, and what business do you have here?" The young woman didn't flinch. She met his glare without blinking, voice steady, accent softened by years spent elsewhere. "My name is Clara Harper. I came to see my mother." A ripple of shock ran through the onlookers. Some exchanged startled glances. Others stared at Evelyn, waiting for her denial or explanation. Evelyn's breath caught in her chest, and for a moment, the years fell away. She saw not a grown woman, but a little girl she once cradled, then sent away to protect from the poison of family scandal. Travis's expression turned from suspicion to outright disbelief, then quickly hardened into anger. "Your mother? That's a bold claim. I think you'd best turn around and ride back to wherever you came from, miss." Evelyn stepped between them, her composure wavering. "She's telling the truth, Travis." A hush fell over the yard. Sarah, watching from the porch, covered her mouth in shock. Even the ranch hands, usually immune to drama, found themselves riveted. Clara's voice trembled, but her eyes never left Evelyn's. "I'm not here to cause trouble, I needed to see you, to know if there's a place for me here." For a moment, Evelyn saw everything she had missed. First words, first steps, all the birthdays celebrated apart. She ached with regret, but forced herself to stand tall. "You have every right to be here," she said quietly. Travis barked a humorless laugh. "That's rich. You think you can just show up and claim a piece of this ranch because you share a last name? I'm not here for the land." Clara shot back, voice firm. "I don't want your money. I just want to know my mother." But Travis was already fuming, suspicion twisting every word he heard. "You expect me to believe that? Convenient timing, isn't it? Right when rumors about the will are stirring up the whole county." The words cut through the air, and for the first time Clara faltered. Evelyn reached for her daughter's hand, but Clara pulled away, shoulders squared, refusing to be coddled. Sarah hurried over, interposing herself between the growing confrontation. "That's enough, Travis. There's more to family than blood and deeds." But Travis was relentless, his pride and fear mixing into something volatile. "You think this is some fairy tale reunion? I know what you're after. The Dawsons built this land. My father, my grandfather, and me. I won't let it slip away because of an outsider's sob story." Evelyn's patience snapped, the years of silence and sacrifice boiling over. "You know nothing about sacrifice, Travis. Nothing about what it costs to protect someone you love." He sneered. "Protect? Or hide? Maybe I should see for myself what else you've been hiding." With a sudden, violent gesture, Travis stormed off toward the ranch house. Clara and Evelyn exchanged worried looks, but Sarah squeezed Evelyn's arm. "He'll dig, but you faced worse than his tantrums." Within the hour, Travis returned with a stack of old documents, family ledgers, letters, even yellowed birth certificates. He brandished them like weapons, shouting for all to hear. "I found the proof. She's your daughter. Illegitimate, hidden for years. If the will recognizes her, that means she could claim everything. Unless we stop it now." The ranch hands, caught in the spectacle, murmured among themselves. Old loyalties battled with new suspicions. Clara stood her ground, voice trembling but unbroken. "I'm not here for the ranch. I want nothing but the truth, and my mother." But Travis's fury grew darker, and now, beneath it, there was something raw, fear of losing what he'd always assumed was his birthright. "If you care about her, you'll send her away, Evelyn. Or I will." Sarah pulled Evelyn and Clara aside as the crowd dispersed, her voice urgent. "You need to watch your back. Travis is talking to men in town. Rough men. He might do something desperate to protect the family name." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Let him come. I've survived worse than his threats." Clara squeezed her mother's hand for the first time, her eyes wet with a cocktail of hope and worry. "I don't want anyone hurt. I just want to belong somewhere. I just want to know you." The day bled into dusk with tension hanging like a thundercloud. The ranch, usually humming with routine, felt uneasy, ranch hands watching Travis's every move, Sarah keeping to the shadows, Evelyn and Clara staying close to the safety of the old cabin. Midnight Saint lingered near the window, as if sensing the unrest, his presence a silent comfort. Inside, Evelyn shared stories with Clara, piecing together lost years with painful honesty. Clara spoke of her life, her longing for a connection that always seemed just out of reach. For the first time, mother and daughter began to stitch together the fabric of family, even as the world outside seemed determined to tear it apart. That night, as thunderheads gathered on the far horizon, Evelyn watched her daughter sleeping on the old couch, her heart aching with a fierce, protective love. She whispered a promise to the darkness, one she would keep at any cost. "You will always have a home here. I will not let him drive you away." But outside, in the restless wind, Travis was plotting his next move, and the true storm had only just begun. Dinner that evening at Dawson Ranch had the feeling of a final reckoning. The long table in the main house, usually a place for shared meals and laughter, now seemed more like a battlefield. Shadows flickered from the chandelier overhead, stretching and distorting faces around the room, turning familiar features into masks of suspicion. Evelyn had dressed simply, but with dignity. Her silver hair neatly brushed, her eyes steady as she entered the dining room. Clara walked beside her, shoulders squared, every inch the daughter of a woman who had learned to survive storms. Sarah stood behind them, a quiet but resolute presence, her lips pressed into a thin line as she watched Travis pacing by the window. The entire household had been summoned. Ranch hands, bookkeepers, even the cook lingered nearby, sensing the drama about to unfold. For years, the Dawson family's secrets had been like thunder rumbling in the distance. Tonight, that storm had rolled in. Travis finally took his seat at the head of the table, chin high, knuckles white where he gripped the arms of his chair. He shot Evelyn a look sharp enough to cut glass, then swept his gaze to Clara. "I called this dinner because the truth has been hidden for too long," he said, voice tight, barely concealing his fury. No one spoke. Even the clatter of cutlery was absent. Travis continued, tone icy. "This ranch was built on Dawson honor, and that honor's under attack. I will not let my family's name or legacy be stolen by lies and manipulations." Clara's voice was quiet, but clear. "I never wanted your land, Travis. I only want my mother." Travis slammed a fist on the table. "Don't play innocent. You show up out of nowhere with stories and secrets. You think you can walk in here and demand acceptance?" Evelyn interrupted, her calm voice a stark contrast to his rage. "She's not demanding anything. If you'd listen, you'd hear she only wants to know her mother. Nothing more." He scoffed. "You always did think you were above the rules, Evelyn. Well, there are consequences for betraying this family." The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing tighter. Sarah, finally unable to stay silent, stood. "Travis, enough. If you want to talk about betrayal, maybe you should start by telling the truth about what happened to Daniel and how this ranch has been run since." Travis's eyes flashed, and the veins stood out in his neck. "Stay out of this, Sarah. You're just the help." Sarah met his glare. "Maybe, but I've been here longer than you've been alive. I know more about this family's sins than you ever will. I know what your father did. I know why Evelyn kept her secret. And I know what Daniel wanted for this land, a place where love meant more than a name." The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, no one moved. Travis's jaw worked as if he was chewing rocks. His fists clenched so hard his knuckles blanched. Evelyn turned to Clara, voice steady but thick with emotion. "When Daniel died, I lost more than the love of my life. I lost any hope that this family could be honest, with itself or with the world. But I would not lose you, Clara. Not again." Clara's eyes glistened with tears, but she held her head high. "I'm not here to take anything from anyone. I just want to belong, to know where I come from. If that's a crime, then I'm guilty." Suddenly, Travis rose, rage breaking loose. He swept his arm across the table, sending glasses and plates crashing to the floor. Red wine spilled like blood over the white linen. He grabbed a nearby rifle from the rack, kept there for wild dogs and snakes, never meant for this kind of night. His voice was wild. "If you want to stay, you'll have to go through me. I'll defend this ranch and our name at any cost. Do you hear me?" Ranch hands and family members recoiled, some ducking for cover. Clara stood frozen, shock written plain on her face. Evelyn stepped between her and Travis, her heart pounding, refusing to yield. Sarah's voice, low but unwavering, cut through the chaos. "Travis, put the gun down. You're not your father, and you sure as hell aren't Daniel. Violence won't bring you peace, only shame." Travis's hands trembled, the gun wavering as he glared at everyone, betrayed by the family he thought he controlled. The silence stretched, taut as a rope ready to snap. Clara spoke, voice trembling but bold. "You can't scare me away. Not anymore. I came here to find my mother, not to fight for a piece of land or a name that means nothing if it's built on hate." Evelyn stared at Travis, blue eyes blazing. "You want to defend this family? Then act like a Dawson. Find your courage, not your anger." The moment teetered on the edge of disaster, everyone holding their breath, waiting for the gun to go off, for the night to end in blood and heartbreak. But Sarah moved slowly to Travis's side, her hand gentle on his arm. "Put it down, Travis. Please, for Daniel's memory, for your own soul." He hesitated, face crumpling in on itself. For the first time, there was something like fear in his eyes, not of losing the land, but of losing himself. He lowered the rifle, letting it fall to the floor with a heavy thud. The tension broke like a fever. Evelyn exhaled. Clara sagged against her mother, and Sarah, always the peacemaker, stood between them all, a quiet pillar in the storm. Nobody said a word for a long moment. The shattered glass and spilled wine bore silent witness to what nearly happened. Evelyn looked at Clara, her voice soft but unbreakable. "You belong here, no matter what anyone says." Travis stared at his hands, chest heaving. His whole world, built on pride and inherited pain, was collapsing, and only he could choose what rose from its ashes. Night pressed in against the windows, thick with promise and threat. The worst wasn't over, but a line had been drawn, and now, at last, the truth could not be buried any longer. The storm arrived suddenly, rolling in from the north with bruised clouds and howling wind, shaking the old ranch house to its bones. Rain hammered the tin roof, drumming out any hope of sleep. Inside, Evelyn paced her cabin, restless, listening to the thunder. She could feel the tension from dinner clinging to her skin, raw and electric. Midnight Saint was spooked, pacing the paddock, nostrils flared at each bolt of lightning. Evelyn tried to calm him with a few soft words and a piece of apple, but the horse's unease mirrored her own. Across the yard, lights still burned in the main house, a warning sign, not a comfort. She heard shouting, Travis's voice, sharp as broken glass, slicing through the roar of the storm. Clara's voice rose, pleading, then cut off by the slam of a door. Evelyn's heart lurched. She was out the door in an instant, boots splashing through mud, hair whipped by wind. Her hand found the old lantern, the one Daniel had fixed so many years ago. As she approached the house, Sarah burst out, eyes wide. Rain streaming down her face. "He's lost his mind. He's got the gun again, and Clara ran. He's after her." Evelyn didn't wait. She dashed to the barn, where Midnight Saint waited, muscles tense and ready. Without a saddle, she leapt onto his back and guided him into the storm, the wind tearing at her coat, lightning clawing the black sky. Every sense was alive. Fear, rage, and the old thrill of battle coursed through her veins. Across the muddy yard, she saw Travis's silhouette, gun in hand, stumbling through the rain, calling Clara's name not with love, but desperation. Clara darted toward the north pasture, her coat flapping like a wounded bird. Travis fired a shot into the air, the crack lost in the thunder. Evelyn shouted, her voice a whip. "Travis, stop!" He spun, wild-eyed, gun swinging toward her, but she was already past him, racing after Clara. Clara reached the barn, ducking inside. Evelyn slid off Midnight Saint and hurried in, wrapping her arms around her daughter. "Are you hurt?" Clara shook her head, breath coming in panicked gasps. "He's lost it. He said he'd kill me before he lets me take the ranch." "You're not taking anything," Evelyn said, brushing wet hair from her daughter's face. "We just have to survive the night. He's scared, Clara, not just of losing the land, but of losing everything he's ever been told to value." Footsteps pounded through the rain. Travis appeared at the door, gun raised, rage and fear making a terrible mask of his face. "Get away from her, Evelyn! I mean it!" Midnight Saint, sensing danger, reared up between Travis and the women, hooves slashing the air, eyes blazing in the lantern light. Travis faltered, forced to step back. "You've done enough damage," he yelled, voice breaking. "You lied! You hid! Daniel would never have wanted this!" Evelyn stood, facing him square, refusing to let fear take root. Daniel wanted this ranch to be a place of love. "You're the one betraying his memory by letting hate win." Thunder crashed, the barn shaking. Travis's hands trembled, the gun wavering as he glared at them, water streaming down his face. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance. The past and the future, love and loss, pride and forgiveness. Clara stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "If you want to shoot someone, shoot me, but you won't get rid of the truth, no matter what you do." Travis's shoulders shook. "You have no right, none of you. This is all I have." Evelyn moved to his side, her hand gentle but firm. "You have a choice, Travis. Be better than the men who came before you. Put the gun down, and let's end this." Midnight Saint stood guard, every muscle ready. Outside, Sarah's lantern bobbed through the darkness. She'd called the sheriff, Evelyn realized, and help was coming, but not fast enough. Travis sobbed, anger turning to grief. "They always said the Dawsons had to be strong, never show weakness, never forgive." Strength isn't about hate, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. It's about doing the right thing when it's hardest. For a heartbeat, it seemed Travis might lower the gun, but another flash of lightning showed his face twisted with uncertainty, a man at war with himself. Suddenly, Midnight Saint surged forward, placing himself squarely between Travis and Clara, his huge body a living shield. He reared, letting out a scream that drowned even the thunder. Travis stumbled back, gun dropping from his hand into the mud. Sirens cut through the night. The sheriff's car barreling down the drive, lights flashing blue and red through the storm. Sarah rushed in, grabbing Clara, pulling her to safety. Travis collapsed to his knees, weeping, as the lawman disarmed him. The danger passed as suddenly as it had flared, the barn echoing with the sound of rain and ragged breathing. Evelyn held Clara tight, whispering words of comfort she should have spoken years before. "It's over, baby. You're safe, I'm here. I'm not letting go." Midnight Saint nuzzled them both, his sides heaving from exertion. In that moment, the bond between woman, daughter, and horse was unbreakable. A family forged not by blood or law, but by the choice to love in the face of fear. The sheriff questioned Travis, who could only shake his head, broken. Sarah stood by, fierce as any mother hen, insisting on the truth for all to hear, about Daniel, about Evelyn, about what really mattered. When the rain finally slowed and the sheriff's car rolled away, the ranch was changed forever. Evelyn and Clara, battered but whole, stood together in the soft dawn light that followed, knowing they'd faced the worst, and won, not by force, but by refusing to let hate dictate their fate. And somewhere in the fields, as the thunder faded and the sky cleared, Midnight Saint ran free, his spirit unbroken, a living emblem of the courage it took to confront the truth and survive the storm. As dawn broke over Dawson Ranch, the world seemed cleansed by the night's violence. The storm clouds had drifted east, leaving behind a sky washed clean and fresh. Puddles glimmered in the ruts of the drive. Birds tentatively resumed their songs, and the scent of wet earth mingled with the sharpness of hope. Inside the house, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she barely tasted. The events of the night before still throbbed in her memory, the shouts, the thunder, Travis's desperate, broken rage. Yet as sunlight streamed in through the curtains, she felt a quiet sense of relief for the first time in years. Clara was safe. The worst was over. Clara entered, hair still damp from a hastily snatched shower, wrapped in one of Sarah's old flannel shirts. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. "Morning, Mama." The word landed with unexpected warmth. Evelyn reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "You sure you're all right?" Clara nodded. "I am now. I never thought coming here would lead to all this. But I'm not sorry I did." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "You have nothing to be sorry for. It's me who kept the truth locked away for so long." Footsteps sounded in the hall, and Sarah appeared, bustling in with a basket of eggs. She surveyed the two women and gave a brisk nod. "You both look like you could use a real breakfast, and a nap, if you ask me." Clara managed a tired smile. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." Sarah shook her head. "No thanks needed. Family's family, blood or not. I just hope Travis finally heard some sense last night." Evelyn's smile faded a little. "Where is he?" "He's out by the west pasture," Sarah said. "Sheriff let him off with a warning, told him to get some sleep and a grip. I saw him sitting alone at sunrise. He's got some reckoning to do, I suppose. Clara looked down. I don't hate him, Mama. I'm angry and scared, sure, but I don't want him ruined. Evelyn nodded, pride mingling with sorrow. That's why you're stronger than you know. They ate breakfast in a fragile peace, the air still heavy with what had nearly happened. Afterward, Evelyn slipped out to the porch. She found Travis standing by the fence, arms crossed, staring into the distance as if searching for a future he'd never considered. He looked different, smaller somehow, his bravado stripped away. For a moment, Evelyn remembered him as a little boy, running wild with Daniel through these same fields, before legacy and pride had made them enemies. She cleared her throat, and Travis flinched, but didn't look away. I suppose you want me gone, he said hoarsely. Evelyn shook her head. I want you to understand, Travis. That's all. Understand why I did what I did, and why Clara came here. She isn't your enemy. Neither am I. He swallowed hard, guilt plain on his face. I was so scared. I thought if I lost this ranch, I'd have nothing left of my family. But I nearly lost everything that matters. He broke off, unable to finish. Evelyn stepped closer. You don't have to carry this alone. Family isn't about bloodlines or deeds or who owns what. It's about forgiveness, Travis. That's what Daniel wanted for all of us. Not pride. Not hate. Travis's shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, Evelyn. For all of it. I don't expect you or Clara to forgive me, but I wish I'd known sooner what it cost you, keeping her away. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. It's not too late, Travis. It's never too late to choose something better. Behind them, Clara appeared, hesitant. Travis turned to her, shame and longing flickering across his face. I know I don't deserve your kindness, Clara, but I promise I'll never stand in your way again. You don't have to leave. The ranch, everything, means nothing if we're not honest. Clara shook her head, her voice steady but gentle. I never wanted the ranch, Travis. I just wanted a mother and a place where I could be myself. I'm not here for revenge or for your legacy. I'm here because I needed to belong somewhere. A silence fell, but this time it was peaceful, almost holy. The anger and suspicion that had poisoned so many years began to dissolve. Sarah joined them, arms folded, eyes twinkling with relief. Well, if that's settled, I'd say it's time this family remembered what it's like to live with open doors and open hearts. Evelyn smiled, tears brightening her eyes. You're right. We've wasted enough time on secrets and fear. Travis looked at Clara, voice shaking. If you want to stay, you're welcome. But if you need to go, if that's what brings you peace, I won't stop you. Clara stepped forward and hugged him, awkward but sincere. I forgive you, Travis. I forgive all of it. He nodded, unable to speak. The four of them stood together as the sun rose higher, bathing the ranch in golden light. Evelyn felt years of weight begin to lift. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that healing might truly be possible. Later that morning, with the worst behind them, Clara made her decision. She would leave Dawson Ranch for now, travel, discover who she was outside of all the old stories and expectations. But she would return, not as a stranger, but as family. As Clara packed her bags, Evelyn handed her the old harmonica. For the road. When you play it, you'll know you're never alone. Clara laughed, the sound clear and bright. Thank you, Mama. The ranch hands waved as she rode out, and even Midnight Saint nickered a soft farewell from his paddock. Evelyn watched her daughter go, tears streaking her cheeks, but her heart felt whole, not broken. Sometimes loving someone meant letting them find their own way. Sarah joined her on the porch, coffee in hand. "You did good, Evelyn. You both did." The storm had cleared. The family was smaller, but stronger. The past, finally, was at rest. As sunlight spilled over the land, Evelyn picked up her harmonica and played a tune for the morning, for forgiveness, for hope. The notes drifted out over the ranch, carried on the breeze, a promise that love and courage would always be the heart of Dawson Ranch. And in the hush that followed, Evelyn knew they had been given a new beginning. Earned the hard way, one that would echo through every sunrise to come. Night had returned to Dawson Ranch, but this time it brought with it not fear or tension, but a gentle hush and a rare sense of peace. Inside Evelyn's cozy cabin, a fire danced in the old stone hearth, casting warm shadows over the faces gathered there. The day's work was done. The scars of the storm had begun to heal, and for the first time in years, laughter floated through the halls of the ranch house. Not forced, not nervous, but real. Evelyn sat in her favorite chair, Clara beside her on the faded old couch, their knees almost touching. Sarah bustled about, refilling mugs of coffee and passing out slices of her legendary apple pie to whoever's hands were free. Even a few of the ranch hands lingered just inside the door, hats off and heads bowed, quietly grateful to be included in the strange, gentle communion that had settled over the house. Travis was there too. He stood apart at first, leaning against the window frame, staring out into the Texas darkness. But he wasn't running away. He listened, silent and raw, absorbing every word spoken in the circle of firelight. The talk started with small things, jokes about horses, tales of wild weather, the time a runaway steer led the whole crew on a 3-county chase. But slowly, the conversation deepened, peeling back the hard outer shell of everyday life to expose the fragile heart beneath. Evelyn cleared her throat. "I spent too many years thinking family honor meant keeping secrets," she said, voice steady. "I told myself I was protecting Clara, protecting Daniel's memory, but I see now I was just hiding from the truth, from pain, from what people might say." Clara squeezed her hand. "You did what you thought was best, Mama. I understand that now. But sometimes the thing we fear most, letting the world see who we really are, is the only thing that can save us." One of the ranch hands, a grizzled old-timer named Gus, nodded slowly. "I've worked this land a long time, Miss Evelyn. I seen what pride does to a family. It's a heavy load, and it don't get lighter the more you carry it." Travis finally spoke, voice low, thick with humility. "I believed what I was taught, that the Dawsons had to be strong, had to stand alone, even if it meant turning on each other. I thought protecting the name was everything, but I nearly destroyed the people I cared about most. I'm sorry." Sarah fixed him with a steady gaze. "It's easy to mistake stubbornness for honor, Travis. The hard part is admitting you were wrong and making it right." The fire crackled, sparks swirling up the chimney. Evelyn's eyes reflected the flames as she spoke, each word drawn from the deepest well of her experience. Family honor is a burden if it means choosing pride over love, lies over truth, or hate over forgiveness. We don't have to keep repeating the mistakes of the past. We can lay those burdens down, right here, tonight. Clara looked at her mother, then at Travis. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It means choosing to move forward, together, even if the road is rough. The conversation wound on, growing richer, more honest. The ranch hands shared their own stories, losses and regrets, moments of cowardice and courage. Even Travis, humbled and uncertain, opened up about his fears, of failure, of change, of being left with nothing but land and a name no one respected. Evelyn spoke of Daniel, her lost love, and the impossible choice she'd made to send Clara away to spare her from scandal. She wept for the years they'd lost, but also for the grace of a second chance. "I always thought the pain would kill me," she admitted, "but holding on to the past only makes the wound fester. Letting go, forgiving myself and others. That's where the healing begins." The hours drifted by. The fire burned low, and slowly, the talk turned to what came next. What would life on the ranch look like after such a reckoning? Could they ever truly leave behind the shadows that had haunted the Dawson name? Sarah, never one to shy from the truth, answered first. "We do it one day at a time. We look out for each other, and we don't let old ghosts set the rules. It won't be perfect, but it'll be honest." Evelyn nodded. "We rebuild with honesty and kindness, with patience, and with the understanding that everyone here, by blood or by choice, is family." Clara brushed away tears, her voice strong. "We face the future together, not alone. We tell the truth, even when it's hard, and we forgive again and again, because that's what love asks of us." The room grew quiet as everyone let those words settle in. The fire's warmth seeped into old bones and wounded hearts. Even Travis, still struggling beneath the weight of guilt and shame, seemed to draw strength from the collective resolve. After a long silence, he stood, walked to the middle of the room, and faced Evelyn and Clara. "I know I've got a long way to go," he said softly. "I'm leaving the ranch for a while. I need to figure out who I am without all this anger and history dragging me down. But I promise, I'll come back, if you'll have me." Evelyn stood, crossed the room, and pulled him into a tight embrace. "We'll always have you, Travis. You're family, and you always will be." Clara joined them, wrapping her arms around both. Sarah smiled, tears glistening in her eyes, as the ranch hands stood to leave, each tipping their hat in respect. When the last guest had gone, Evelyn and Clara sat by the dying fire, shoulders pressed together, watching the embers glow. The night outside was peaceful, the weight of the past finally eased. Forgiveness had not erased the pain, but it had broken the cycle, set them free. Evelyn spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to see what matters most. I hope we never forget this lesson, Clara. Pride is heavy, but love can make you lighter than air." Clara smiled. "I'll remember, Mama. Always." And as sleep claimed the house and the Texas night wrapped Dawson Ranch in gentle darkness, something new was born. A hope that would endure, a promise that their story would be different from those that came before. The cycle of hatred was broken. Forgiveness and love at last were given room to grow. Dawn stretched slowly over the Texas prairie, painting the land with a new light. Evelyn Harper stood on her front porch, letting the soft breeze brush over her face, carrying the scent of mesquite and wildflowers. The horrors of the past week felt far away now, as if they had happened to someone else, in another life. This morning was gentle, golden, and full of promise. Midnight Saint waited at the paddock fence, black coat shining in the sunrise, mane ruffled by the wind. Evelyn walked toward him, harmonica in hand, boots sinking into dew-wet grass. The world was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat, steady and strong. With practiced ease, she slipped the halter over the stallion's head and climbed onto his back, the leather cool beneath her. They set off across the fields, the ranch coming alive behind them. Ranch hands waved as they passed, some heading for the barn, others leading sleepy-eyed horses toward the river. Sarah's laughter floated through the air, mingling with the birdsong as she joked with the cook over the morning's biscuits. All around, life was beginning again. Ordinary, precious, unbroken. Evelyn guided Midnight Saint up the gentle rise that overlooked the entire ranch. She paused there, taking it all in. The rolling pastures, the weathered barns, the neat rows of fencing, and the dusty road winding out toward the horizon. This land had seen so much. Love and loss, fear and forgiveness, generations of Dawsons and Harpers all tangled together in stories as wild and tangled as the prairie grass. Her thoughts drifted to Clara, already awake and preparing to leave. Mother and daughter had talked for hours the night before, about the future, about freedom, about how love could heal even the deepest wounds. Clara was leaving, yes, but not as an outcast. She was leaving with Evelyn's blessing and an unbreakable bond between them. Evelyn closed her eyes, raised the harmonica to her lips, and played a tune soft and sweet, the melody lifting on the morning breeze. The notes seemed to stitch the past and present together. Her love for Daniel, her grief for lost years, her hope for Clara's journey. Each breath was a prayer for peace, for courage, for the strength to let go. When she returned to the ranch house, Clara stood waiting with her bags packed and a brave smile on her face. Her blue eyes were bright, clear, the same eyes Evelyn saw in the mirror each day, a reminder of everything she had lost and everything she had gained. Sarah bustled over, pressing a fresh-baked roll into Clara's hands. "You'll come back now, you hear? This place isn't the same without you." Clara hugged Sarah tight. "I will. I promise." Travis approached, looking awkward and a bit lost, but hopeful. He reached for Clara's hand. "Take care out there, and don't be a stranger, all right?" Clara squeezed his hand. "I won't. And Travis, thank you for trying." He nodded, words failing him, but his gratitude was plain. As the sun rose higher, Clara mounted her own horse, one Evelyn had trained years ago, a gentle bay with a white blaze. Evelyn walked beside her to the edge of the property. There mother and daughter embraced. No tears, just a deep, quiet love that would not be broken by distance. "You have your journey, Clara," Evelyn said, her voice steady, "and I have mine. Wherever you go, I'll be here. The door will always be open." Clara smiled, swinging into the saddle. "I know, Mama, I know." Evelyn watched as Clara rode away, silhouette shrinking against the endless sky, heart heavy but free. She didn't cry. Instead, she walked back to the paddock, where Midnight Saint waited patiently. She leaned against his neck, feeling the strength and warmth of the stallion who had, in his own way, healed her heart. Sarah joined her, standing at her side as they looked out over the ranch. "You think she'll come back?" Sarah asked softly. Evelyn nodded. "She will. We're family now, in a way we never were before." Sarah smiled, wiping away a tear. "You taught us all something, Evelyn, about forgiveness, about letting go." Evelyn looked at the sun rising over the prairie, her voice almost a whisper. "We spend so much of our lives trying to hold on to pride, to land, to the past. But sometimes the bravest thing is letting go. Forgiveness isn't weakness, Sarah. It's the strongest thing there is. They stood in silence for a long while, the wind carrying the harmonica's melody and the scent of grass. Around them, the ranch continued its steady rhythm. Birth, death, joy, struggle, and always, the hope that tomorrow would be a little better than yesterday. As the day unfolded, Evelyn visited every corner of the ranch. She checked on the foals in the north pasture, offered advice to a young hand trying to calm a skittish gelding, and helped mend a fence damaged in the storm. With each act, she felt herself growing lighter, less haunted by what might have been, more grateful for what was. By late afternoon, she returned to the porch, where Sarah had set out 2 cups of sweet tea. They sat together, talking and laughing, as if the weight of years had finally slipped from their shoulders. As the sun dipped low, casting the world in honeyed light, Evelyn picked up her harmonica one last time and played, this time not for herself, not for the past, but for everyone who would ever call Dawson Ranch home. The song was one of freedom, of hope, of new beginnings. Her story, Clara's story, Travis's story, didn't end with forgiveness or with a final goodbye. It lived on every day in the choices they made and the love they chose, even when it hurt. Dawson Ranch, at last, was a place where the past could rest and the future was wide open. In that music, in the golden dusk, Evelyn Harper found her peace. She had learned, through trial, through loss, through love, that true happiness isn't found in holding tight to what we fear to lose, but in letting go, forgiving, and living authentically, right where we are. Sometimes, she thought, the greatest strength is in forgiveness, in choosing love over pride, and in walking away from the burdens of the past. Just as she, Clara, and even Midnight Saint did, embracing the freedom and wild promise of the Texas plains. And as night fell and the stars blinked on, Dawson Ranch, reborn, stood as quiet testament to the truth that had taken a lifetime to learn. Family is what we choose, forgiveness is what sets us free, and love, always, is what remains.